I am incredulous. Or, I don't believe it. Well, actually, we're turning that on its head, which is...
Hang on. 4-5 seconds you lasted?
Anyway, we're turning it on its head because we are slabbing a show called Believe It. And yes, it has Richard Wilson in it, but not as Victor Meldrew. We'll get to that in a mo. I am Adrian Lacey. This is the Comedy Slab. It's edition 182. I'm speaking to you from the southeast of England and not a pair of windy trousers. I know how your mind works. Shane O'Connor, come in, please, from the Midlands. How are you? How's your week been?
I'm very windy trousers as well. Thank you very much indeed, yes. I can't believe you only lasted about 4 seconds. Do you ever remember that when Richard Wilson appeared in Father Ted?
No. In a word.
And as Richard Wilson. And Father Ted says to Dougal, I'm going to go up to him and do his catchphrase. He'll love it. And you see like a long shot, and he goes down to see Richard Wilson, and he like shouts, I don't believe it, right in his face.
Yeah.
And then you see Richard Wilson just attacking him. and he walks all the way back up. Father Ted is all dishevelled, staggering up, and Dougal says, how did that go then, Ted?
Oh, lovely. And actors uniquely, particularly famous ones like them, would understand the joke on top of the kind of superficial level. There's a deeper level of experience for them. Okay, well, we'll put that to one side, but we will be putting that BBC radio show on the slab shortly. Be it the slab of shame or the slab of fame, you'll have to stay tuned to find out. So we'll review it in a little while. And by the way, it is available on the BBC Sounds app, certainly in the UK, should be beyond that. Shane, by now, will have sorted all the blurb for you, letting you know where you can find the show. And, of course, you can review it yourself. Anti-social media details at the end of the show. First, though, I know to you youngsters out there, it will sound like people of a certain age like us very often mourning the passing of big names, but we absolutely can't fail to register the passing of Barry Cryer. Just died, was it 86, I think I read?
Yes, it was, yeah.
I'm confusing him, actually, with Richard Wilson. I've just been reading up on, is 85 as we speak. Hopefully he's got more years in him. But actually, as we'll get to the show, you'll see there's a certain dark humour about that anyway. But Barry apparently telling jokes until the very last, including one about an Archbishop of Canterbury to the nurse who was working for him and with him. But I don't know what that joke is. It's kind of annoying because he's not around to ask now. Do you know the one?
Yeah. It's a guy's out with his wife, and his wife says to him, he says, isn't that the Archbishop of Canterbury over there? Mm. And he says, I don't know, I'm not sure. She said, well, go and ask him. He'll tell you. Go and ask him. So he wanders over and goes to ask this bloke, and he says, excuse me, he says, sorry to bother you. He said, are you the Archbishop of Canterbury? And the bloke turns around and goes, F off. And he goes, oh, all right. So he wanders back to his wife, and his wife says, what did he say? He said he told me to F off. She went, oh, that's a shame. She said, I guess we'll never know whether it was the Archbishop of Canterbury now.
Gorgeous. Very, very Cryer-esque. Jack Dee's written part of his short obit, which you can find in The Guardian online. He's written that it was always his aim, Jack Dee's aim, to try and tell Barry a joke he'd never heard, but Jack thinks he never succeeded because Barry knew them all and wrote a good few of them as well, of course.
I reckon a lot of people are having similar kinds of conversation. Before we started recording tonight, I had a conversation with my wife, and she was saying, she said, it seems this year like all we do is say, oh, somebody else from, our younger days has died. Mm. She was saying people like Des O'Connor and Bruce Forsyth and people who were on the TV when we were growing up. And of course, that's just the age we are now, isn't it? This is what we have to look forward to, unfortunately.
Thank you very much for reminding me. Yes, it is a function of that. We will try and have some upbeat comedy news one of these fine weeks, but we're not really in control of fully in control of the agenda, shall we say, putting it delicately. And if we'd had the choice, of course, we would have kept Barry alive forever. The thing is, you can't feel that it wasn't a life well lived and a good long life, and for the most part, as far as I know, a good healthy life. But what I'm mourning more than anything, this might sound a bit selfish, but it's the loss of all those anecdotes. Okay, the jokes will probably last because he told enough people, and hopefully you'll carry on remembering them as you did just then. But, who around now has got his kind of experience stretching back to around wartime or not long afterwards, 60 years in comedy? With all the greats he worked with.
Didn't he start at the Windmill?
Yes, he did. He did. He was between the nudie ladies, the bare naked ladies.
We never closed the Windmill. I was trying to explain to my wife about it. What I can't remember what it was called. The something law, wasn't it, or something, where the girls couldn't move. They could be naked, but they couldn't move.
How did they get on stage?
Well, the curtains
were they born there?
Were they born there?
You didn't say they could move with the curtain down.
Yeah, they could. Yeah, well, obviously nobody can see them. They're on
about. They can see each other.
Something law. I can't remember what it was called. Some censorship law where they couldn't. They weren't allowed, and they'd have to stand stock still, completely naked.
I bet no one believed they were real. They probably thought, they've just got some mannequins from Regent Street or something, some boutique.
But because of the fact that they never closed, they were open 24 hours a day. They got through. Performers 10 to the penny, didn't they? They were like kind of, and people went there to kind of cut their teeth on show business kind of thing.
Absolutely, as he did. And of course he was a stand-up in those days. But I was reading he had a bad skin condition. It wasn't psoriasis, but eczema. And he couldn't tolerate, his skin couldn't tolerate all the slap, the makeup that they would be putting on it in those days, particularly heavy makeup. And that's really what made him big. The way I read it, one of the obits I read today, that's really what made him come off the stage, as it were, for the most part, and become a writer. So. In one sense, the skin condition was the making of him as a comedy writer.
What amazes me about his career, and this is why I think it's one of those careers that you can look back at, and for me anyway, I kind of think, how can you be writing for Jim Dale and Tom Jones and Danny LaRue in the late 60s and be working with Jack D and all kinds of
and Kenny Everett in the
Rory
80s,
Bremner, Kenny Everett, and I mean, how can you have a career? How can you keep a pace of comedy over that kind of period of time?
Well, that's again, I think it's pretty unique to Barry Cryer, wasn't it? Which is another part of the loss, because I don't think. Well, probably not true to say no one's as versatile. I mean, I immediately think of Paul Merton writing gags for Julian Clary back in the day. I don't know if he still does, but Paul could also write his own material, and that's quite a different style in a way. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredible collection of, a CV, really. Amazing.
Yeah, he had that lovely relationship with Kenny Everett, as you say, that Kenny Everett used to call him Bar, and he used to call Kenny Everett Ev, didn't they?
Very affectionate sounding.
Lovely guy. I never interviewed him, sadly, and that's one of my greatest regrets in his incredible life and career, that the arc of my fizzle never kind of came anywhere near
your
his
fizzle.
burning.
But Can we talk about your fizzle?
That's my fizzle. It's fizzled. But did you ever manage to work with him at all? Or
I did work with him, and also, I mean, I was raised in Watford. I was born in London, but raised in Watford. And my dad. This is complete coincidence. People might say the connection comes through me working at the Beeb and so on. It wasn't that at all. Quite by chance, my dad moved from one church closer to us because he knew the organist that moved to another church in Hatch End, which is where Barry Cryer lived. And I don't know if I've coined this term, but I do refer to the Hatch End Mafia, which also included Claire Rayner. She wasn't part of my dad's circle, but by some quirk of fate, my dad's vicar used to drink with Barry Cryer. They had the same local. So, I mean, if you want, a vicar walks into a pub with Barry Cryer, that was what happened. And then my mate Gary has just added an extra layer of authenticity and detail onto that today in a message about Barry Cryer, saying, I think it was his mum spotted Barry Cryer in the Wetherspoons in Hatch End. And you think, you might associate Barry Cryer with a slightly classier joint. I don't know. But then it is Hatch End, as I said to my friend Gary, Hatch End Wetherspoons. I mean, it's a cut above your average Wetherspoons.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not your run-of-the-mill Wetherspoons.
It's aspirational.
Yeah. They're the kind of people who get out of the bath to have a wee, aren't they? But you know what I mean? They're not. Oh
yeah, classy sort.
Yeah, they are the classy bunch, aren't they? Really.
But the other thing, I nearly interviewed Barry. I thought about it. It's one of those many things, and yes, I can have regrets about that. But it was never going to be a problem to get in contact with Barry. Why? Because I knew from living just a few miles away in Oxley, which is south of Watford. In the phone book was Barry Cryer, same phone book, because we had Hatch End numbers were in our local phone book. And you just looked up Cryer, Barry, and it had his phone number. It wasn't X directory. And I kind of think that's how the man was, just completely open to people and saw it. In some ways, it just seems to come across as, it was just a job. In another way, it was an absolute passion to him, obviously.
It's one of the quotes on the Internet Movie Database is he said, "You don't retire in this business. Your phone just stops ringing." And his never did it? It never stopped ringing?
No, I don't think it did. Mostly it was me, and I did get done for nuisance calls. But
he said, I wish you hadn't taken that page out of the phone book now. Sad loss. And, I love that story about the fact that he was telling jokes right up to the end, because even if it's not true, I don't care. I want to believe it.
No, well, it was the family writing that, so I am inclined to believe it. But yes, let's believe it anyway.
Yeah. Talking about believing it.
Tenuous link.
Tenuous? It's the title of the blooming thing we're doing, isn't it?
You didn't do the voice, though. It threw me. I just didn't notice.
Tenuous link?
Believing it. You should be doing. At least make the effort. Thank you very much for easing me onto and prompting me, indeed, to move on with the show, which is, to review Believe It, which... Strangely, well, if I tell you it's by John Cantor and it's described as a not entirely reliable autobiography, well, I think the first clue is that it's not written by Richard Wilson. That's kind of telling you it might not be a standard autobiography.
He doesn't write, does he, Richard Wilson?
Does he not?
I don't
believe it.
He's quite into directing, particularly
yes, he's
in
a theatre lover, isn't he?
Yeah, but I don't think he does write. I don't think he. I think that's his thing at all, which is a shame, really, because I think given his sense of humour, I think he could make a fist of it personally. But there you go.
Well, he's probably just too busy directing plays and all of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, what was your reaction on finding out that this was your homework for the last week, dear boy?
It was a bit. It's outside the area of my expertise. I'm afraid. Sorry, I've been watching Count Arthur Strong again.
Right, I thought that it sounded more like Toast of London. You did the hands.
Sorry. What was my reaction? I was racking my brains a bit, actually, because I remember. Well, I have an unreliable memory, I've just realised, because for some reason I thought that the first series of this was only 15 minutes long.
Right.
And I went back to check, and it isn't. They've all been half-an-hour episodes. So I remember hearing the first series. And I think I said to you, I remember hearing the first series and thinking, well, this is an odd autobiography. I thought it was an abridged autobiography of his.
Right. Well, if you came in from that angle, I mean, you're probably meant to think that if they can present it that way. But your brain's struggling to make sense of it, isn't it?
It was like it'd bobble along nicely, and then you'd go, what?
Mm-hmm.
As I did with this, really, but yeah, and it is very confusing to the old grey matter. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah,
yeah, there was certainly no trepidation or anything. I'm just kind of thinking, yeah, okay, well, let's bring it on. Let's have a listen. Let's see how reliable my memory is, which, as we proved, wasn't particularly good.
But funnily enough, that is the theme of the show, isn't it? Together with mortality,
Yes.
his memory's going, and he is wondering what kind of legacy he'll leave behind. So I should say that this is an episode entitled Legacy. Don't think it has an episode number, although if it did, my maths suggests it might be number 3, but it doesn't matter. Just look out for Legacy, and it is Series 3 at least. As I say, you'll find it on BBC Sounds as we speak. Not available for very long, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Or if you're listening to this in a few weeks, you've either missed it or it's come back again, or one of the other series has been repeated. So what can I say to ease you in? Well, every week, as far as I know, I haven't heard every episode because I am a Unitarian, only tend to listen to one episode of any given series. But Shane may be able to correct me or otherwise, but I think there's at least one big name in for each episode, isn't there?
I think there's a little handful, a little clutch of
a clutch
of celebrities.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, but there's a number of, there's a sprinkling, I might say, of radio types playing themselves. For instance, John Humphries. I should say this was originally released 5 or so years ago, 2017. John Humphries was very much still on the Today programme then. Kathy Clugston, Radio 4 announcer stroke newsreader. But the big star name is a certain fellow Scottish actor, David Tennant. And earlier in the show, this is the second appearance, I think, of David Tennant in this particular episode. In the first show, first part of the show, I should say, the first scene that they're in together, David Tennant invites Richard Wilson round to dinner. And this, we come back to the David Tennant, Richard Wilson axis to find Richard turning up ever slightly early for dinner.
Richard, this is a surprise.
Oh dear. Have you forgotten?
What?
You invited me for supper.
I did.
Saturday week, you said.
That's right.
Did you change your mind? I didn't get a message.
No, you're a bit early.
8 o'clock, you said.
That's right.
Well, it's 5 past.
Well, I know, but it's Wednesday.
Is it?
You're 3 days early.
This is terrible.
Oh, don't worry about it. These things happen.
I remembered it was Saturday. I just forgot today was Wednesday.
Well, come in now you're here. We've had supper, but I'm sure we can knock you up an omelette or something.
No. It's out of the question. I'll see you in 3 days' time.
You can wait in the hall.
Don't tease me, please.
Sorry.
It's the legacy. It's doing my head in. I'm floundering.
Okay. Well, off the top of your head, what's your most precious possession?
My Manchester United season ticket.
Well, there you are then. Make that your legacy.
Oh, yeah, because he comes from Manchester, doesn't he? I've forgotten about that.
Is that satire?
Yes.
Or
yes.
just your poor memory again?
Yes.
Yes,
now
it's
all
from
these
Greenock.
plastic Man United fans get on me wick a bit, but there you go. I'll leave that at the door.
Yes. Well, you obviously haven't.
Do you know, he's cornered the market, hasn't he, David Tennant, in playing David Tennant?
Well, I think he's one of the better people to do that. I mean, he's not necessarily the best.
I've seen better, I must admit.
Anyway, we need a headline before we get distracted.
Can I just before I do that, because I haven't really thought of one, I've forgotten about it this week.
Your brain really is going.
He does do it quite a bit, doesn't he, David? Like he was in stage with what's his fella, the Welsh chappie. Do you remember that?
Yes, Michael Sheen playing Michael Sheen.
Yeah. This is the new thing, isn't it? Is instead of doing Shakespeare, just do yourself, darling.
Give me a headline. That's what I need before one of us departs prematurely.
The headline. All right, my headline is "Believe it or believe it not." I quite liked it.
Oh, right. Good. I believe it, and I'm delighted. I always prefer you to like it. It might be better box office if we're cocks and box. And disagree with each other, but I think we're fine. We're roughly on the same page this week, so that's good.
The thing, it's a weird one because it's not. I wouldn't go bonkers over it, but it has a high degree. I mean, how could it not have a high degree of professionalism and gravitas to it?
That sounds like slightly faint praise for a comedy.
No,
comedians prefer to be thought of as really funny rather than with necessarily with
It
gravitas.
isn't really funny though, is
professionalism.
it? I mean, it's amusing. I mean, it isn't really. I wouldn't say it was really fun, but it was a really pleasant listen. I mean, I came away from it thinking, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and in my listening, it's pretty damn unique. It occupies a place. I think it's almost its own genre. I can't quite pigeonhole it, which is probably a good thing. It is of some kind of genre. It's sort of parodying an autobiography, but it's sufficiently out there for you to think, oh, this is an interesting multiverse or parallel universe.
Yeah.
It's not. The rules are kind of tilted, aren't they, on their side?
How did you feel? Because this is where I was a bit conflicted with it. I didn't know whether I would prefer, and then I'd have probably gone, oh, it's a bit boring. But I don't know if I'd have preferred it to have been more read as if it was an audiobook autobiography and less acted. It kind of surprised me that there was that much acting in it.
Right. Are you thinking almost of a solo read?
Yeah, I didn't think there'd be as much dramatisation in it, and I think on balance, I think I came away more glad than not than it did. But I suppose I'd have to hear it the other way in order to completely make my mind up. Did that enter your psyche at all or not?
It didn't, but as you said it just then, funnily enough, it made me think Ronnie Corbett's autobiography. He read his own, and that became a Radio 4 series, and that was very listenable. You know, his background brought up in a baker's. His dad was a baker, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I've got it. I've got his autobiography.
Of course, you're very good on autobiographies, as we know. But so, I mean, Richard is obviously a strong enough actor to carry that off. It just seems a bit churlish to complain that you've actually got a David Tennant and extra sort of there's dream sequences involving the aforementioned Radio 4 announcers, presenters. You're laughing, so we wouldn't want to lose those, would we?
No.
And have him just, funny though he could be on his own, it's more colour, isn't it? More a sonic range.
I think, and that's what I mean, is that I came away feeling more pleased than not about it. And I think it only popped into my head because that's what I kind of remembered it as, and that's what my expectation was. And then, of course, it wrong-footed me when it didn't do that. I was like, oh.
So be it. What else can we say? Well, Richard's background, obviously, we've touched a little on his theatrical background, so that seems to be his strength. I'll trot this out. I'm sure I've told this probably 100 slabs or so ago, but I was in Victoria Station one day, like you do, that being my local toyminess into London, and a certain Richard Wilson went whizzing by me with a suitcase and shouting, and I thought, oh, hello, there'll be a camera here. And I look up, sure enough, there's a camera. He was shooting 1 foot in the Algarve.
Oh, classic. Brilliant.
Did you see that?
I've seen that episode. Fantastic.
Is that just a single episode? I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's a special. It's like a kind of an hour and something.
Oh wow, right. Well, anyway, I happened to see him at the BBC just briefly to speak to because he was appearing on a Radio 4 show, and I mentioned this, and he said, I hope the writer's not listening, and this isn't a put down actually, but he did say that the show was built around the pun, which I really respect. You know, the fact that it sounded like grave Algarve, obviously, but I mean most people might have assumed that, but he confirmed it, and I kind of think, well, to put such weight on a pun and to have to build an entire location shoot with scores of people and to write around it just because it's a good pun for the title. Well, it brings back memories of an ongoing sketch on Dead Ringers, the sort of topical send-up show with John Culshaw and a fine Scots mimic. They had an ongoing theme which was, we thought of the title first. Yeah. And that's how it was with 1 foot in the Algarve.
I think he's doing it a great injustice, really. I think probably what it was, and I think it probably would be upset. It would be an upset to David Renwick, who wrote it. Fabulous writer, who of course wrote all the Jonathan Creek stuff as well, didn't he?
Oh, which you love.
Yeah, I always thought it was very clever. It was very well constructed from a writing perspective. I always thought it was good, but I suspect that by that time, Richard Wilson was probably getting a bit weary of the whole 1 foot in the grave shtick, and maybe that's what it was. You should watch it. I mean, you're a Unitarian. If you're going to watch one episode
Well,
of
it's a
1 foot in
special,
the grave,
so yeah,
that's as good as any. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah. Well, I repeat, I don't think it was a put down. So, but yes, I should watch it. You're quite right. But I've always struggled with 1 foot in the grave, in as much as I've tried, and the slapstick stuff. I'm afraid I don't know how much there is, but when I've seen clips, just doesn't do it for me. It just leaves me cold, and it makes me think. Well, I don't think that's Richard Wilson's strength. But then, I mean, do you think slapsticks is it a big part of it or not a big part of it?
I mean, there is some physical comedy in there. I wouldn't go so far as to say slapstick.
Yeah, it was probably the wrong term. Yeah, I meant physical comedy, to be fair.
And don't forget, Peter Cook starred in 1 foot in the Algarve as well.
Did he?
Yeah.
Now I'm interested.
As a kind of Clouseau-esque detective. I was trying to find. There's another actor in there who's gone on to have his own series. I think he stars as a fire chief or something in the United States, and he's an amazing actor. I can never remember his blooming name, but he starred in it as well. Fantastic. Some good actors in there, and of course Annette Crosby as well.
Yes, always
she's
good.
fabulous, isn't she? But and the lovely Doreen Mantle, who was Mrs. Warboys, who I did get to interview at one time. But yeah, I don't know. I think, like, actors remember it differently, don't they? Maybe, I don't know.
They do. Shall we move on to our second audio clip? Just trying to set the scene here. Well, you know me, I love the sound of a female voice. I did actually ask my girlfriend, who herself has, of course, a lovely voice. Not
female, unfortunately, but you can't have everything.
Well, yeah, a little bit gruff
she
down
said,
in her boots.
Yes, Adrian, what can I do for you?
But she sings an amazing bass sound, so
yes.
It swings and roundabouts. Anyway, I got her to choose 2 clips, or at least gave her the illusion of thinking she was choosing the 2 clips, because we just listened to the show. It was my second listening tonight with her, and she chose one with David Tennant and one later in the show. It was about on the theme of the legacy, talking to someone about having a toilet in a theatre named after him. You have to hear it to make sense of it, but you can see how surreal it is. But that was another male voice, as well as the obvious maleness of Richard Wilson. So I thought we'd have some contrast, and I found this quite an amusing character. She only pops up once, name of Julie, and this is Richard again. It's his quest to find his legacy. What can he leave behind? How will he be remembered? And he's wondering whether he can leave any body parts.
Hello, this is Richard Wilson.
Hello, Mr. Wilson.
I'd like to make an appointment.
Who with?
God.
I'm afraid there's no one of that name here. Is there anyone else who could help you?
Maybe you can. What's your name again?
Julie?
I'd like to donate my body to medical research, Julie.
Right.
And I was wondering if they'd want it.
Have you registered on the NHS website?
No, but I've taken a worn-out pair of trousers to the charity shop, and I've seen the way they looked at them. My body's like those trousers, do you see?
I'm not with you, Mr. Wilson.
Well, it's threadbare, Julie. No one will want it. They certainly won't want my heart, will they?
I'm not sure. Oh, I'll just get it up on the line. Here we go. Heart valves and tendons can only be donated up to the age of 60.
Shame. It's the best part of your body, isn't it? The one that means the most. With the surgery like my heart, Julie, you could leave it in the foyer.
Is there anything else I can help you with?
I'll take that as a no.
I never thought I'd say this, but I love the way he says foyer.
Foyer.
Foyer. I listened to that a few times. Do you know what I loved about it was the attention to detail. Now, unfortunately, with her, there is no connection. But
you horror! Well, I will mount a strong defence in a mo, but you make your point first.
No, in as much as she is nobody that he knows.
Ah, okay.
But when he talks to Daniel Evans, he's talking to a little bit earlier on. He's the artistic director at Chichester at the theatre.
Chichester, I think it's pronounced. Theatre.
He is actually the artist. He's Daniel Evans. He's actually the artistic director at Chichester. And he mentions Richard Wilson said, "Oh, I was playing the headmaster in Alan what's his name's thing."
Mm.
He was actually playing the headmaster in Alan Bennett's 40 Years On.
Right.
And then later on, he talks about being brought up in Dunlop Street in Greenock. That's true as well.
Mm.
And then even a little bit later on, he's having a conversation with David Tennant, and he said, "When did we first meet?" And Tennant said, "Oh, I don't know, it was about 1995.
Mm.
We were in something together. I can't remember what it was." Well, in actual fact, in 1995, they were at the National in a production of a play that starred John Alderton, Deborah Gillett, the lovely late Nicola Paget, David Tennant, and Richard Wilson.
Golly gosh.
And so it's got all these touchstones throughout, which I had to keep looking up now just to find out.
Became obsessive in the end.
Yeah. I just thought it was a wonderful touch because there was, if you chose to search for it, there was reality in there, or if you knew him that well, there was reality in there. And to me, that's one of the cleverest things about it.
I'm going to play devil's advocate there. Isn't it clever to fabricate a past for him? You have to create it from scratch.
No, I don't, because I think you have to fit it in such a way. Now, I don't know what made me look it up. I think it was because I've been looking up other stuff and figured out that was true as well. But the fact that I had to try and find the play that they were in together in 95.
Mm.
Which took a bit of doing, I have to say. But I found it in the end, and I thought, I mean, obviously he must have sat down and like interviewed them both, or maybe just said, "Have you ever worked together?" "Oh, I'll work that in," kind of thing. When John Cantor sat and wrote it, I think that's cleverer. I think it's cleverer to make that all fit, make all the pieces fit, don't you?
Oh, well, I was playing devil's advocate. Speaking as someone who's writing something semi-autobiographical, because it's always about me, not about you or Richard Wilson. Actually, no, it does bring us neatly back to Steve Coogan and the trip, because I was quite inspired by the fact that Steve Coogan said of, I think he was talking about the trip, but even if he wasn't, he'd be talking about other similar works where he's playing a version of himself, Rob Brydon likewise. He said, "I could take you through line by line by line and say, that's true, that happened to me, that one didn't, that did, that one didn't." It's literally like that. So when we say semi-autobiographical, it really can mean that. And that sounds like what's going on in this show, believe it.
I just thought it was woven beautifully. And then there was that kind of surreal thing where they're suggesting that he's got this penchant for high-end trainers.
But beautifully drawn in words, because you can picture them and you think, hang on, he's in his 80s and he's wearing trainers.
Well, he's not just wearing trainers, he's wearing Android high tops, which are 150 quid a pair.
Which, of course, I'm very well acquainted with.
Then he's wearing Nike Flyknit Air Max, which are 100 quid plus a pair. And then at the end, he's wearing Valentino camouflage print low tops, which apparently are about £600 a pair. So it kind of gets more expensive as time goes on with this. But you're right, and it's just, it is that wonderful. You can sit there and Google it if you want to. You don't have to if you don't. But it's a wonderful image, whatever happens, isn't it?
I obviously wasn't listening closely enough. I heard the trainers reference. I didn't realise it was 3 different models, and I certainly didn't research the price.
Yeah, he got a different pair on every time somebody said, "Oh, I like your trainers." And it was the fact that he knew what they were. Do you know what I mean? It was like he was a trainer.
Also, he's
aficionado.
just told us how tatty his trousers are. So
Yeah.
you wouldn't want the whizziest trainers on earth, 600 quid's worth, and then wear a crap pair of trousers.
Or it would have been the same ones all the way through. It was the fact that it was delicious that the fact it was mentioned on 3 different occasions, and on 3 different occasions there were different ones. You know?
Yeah. I meant to look up, but I've failed. I'm trying to do it on the fly, but now I've drawn attention to it, I don't think I'm going to get away with it. Do we know any other works by John Cantor? Has he come from nowhere, or is he massively famous and I should already have been aware of him? Probably the latter.
I did look him up actually, and I'm just trying to find him in notes where he'd done other stuff. He'd interestingly enough, Mr. Bean featured in the episode, didn't it? It was Simon Greenall playing Mr. Bean, which I just love.
Such as Mr. Bean is when he's on the radio.
I suppose it gives Simon Greenall a rest from playing meerkats on TV ads, but there you go.
So.
It all pays the bills. John Cantor actually did write some Mr. Bean, and I think he started.
Even better.
He started out early in his career writing for Davy Jason. He wrote for 2 series of the Jason explanation. That was more or less the first writing gig that he had. And do you remember the Dawn French thing, Murder Most Horrid?
I do, yes.
He was responsible for that. I think that was his as well.
I like that.
Yeah,
I've
good.
just about caught up with him. He was a housemate of Douglas Adams at one point when he was working in advertising copywriting, as a number of them do. That's one route in. Writing for Dawn French, as you say, Angus Deaton, Mel Smith, Lenny Henry, Griff Rhys-Jones, Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie. Well, that's not a grubby list, is it, really?
Well, apart from... No, not too...
No, leave it. I don't believe it.
Everybody's got to do things that you look back and regret, I suppose.
Stop it. I'll see you afterwards.
There were some lovely little lines in it as well. There was that American woman Lucinda when he's talking to her when he's in the hospitality box at Man United at Old Trafford.
Oh, so she sounded Texan.
Yeah, and she started to say, about did you want to sleep with me or something? And he said well, I would sleep with you, Lucinda, but I'm gay and I get a bit tired. And I
do you need 2 reasons after the first one?
Yeah, just in case the first one wasn't enough. I thought he'd throw in the fact that he's old and he gets a bit tired.
Of course, if I had the energy, I could sort of convert myself.
It's just lovely, isn't it? And there's one point where he turns on the radio and it's Loose Ends, an edition of Loose Ends, and they're talking about Don Rickles dying, the American comedian.
Right.
And that was that month, April 2017, when this was written. Again, the whole, it's just, I thought they'd been caught out when they said Rooney scored. Because I thought Rooney wasn't at Man United. He'd left Man United. He'd gone to Everton in 2017, but it was at the end of that season, so he would have been at Man United and he still would have scored. So they didn't even catch me out there.
Technicality.
Yeah.
I should have credited, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Eva Filer, I think that would be, or Filer, Feiler. She played Julie in our second audio clip. And Believe It is produced by Clive Brill, and it's a Brill production for BBC Radio. I reckon it's that time, although we could natter all the time, incessantly, and probably will. But time for scores on the doors. Score out of 5. I think it might be your turn to go first. Not sure.
Quite happy to. I would say for me, I mean, notwithstanding the fact that Richard Wilson, for me, has the most fantastically listenable voice, and he could sit there and read out the phone book, and I'd be more than happy to sit and listen for a couple of hours. He's such a great actor. He's so, pardon the pun, believable. And when you throw in the likes of David Tennant, again, it's just a class act, isn't it? So, for me, I couldn't fail to give it anything less than a 4 out of 5. Brilliant.
Well, snap. I'm 4 out of 5 too, which makes a grand total, of course, of 8 out of 10, 80%. That's not a bad score for Believe It. We were listening to Series 3 and the episode entitled Legacy. And as I say, you'll find that on BBC Sounds, BBC Online, etc., etc. Good luck with that, and I hope you enjoy it. And by all means, post your own review on our Facebook page, which we will reveal later if you're not already aware of it. So it must be time for you to set the rest of us some homework for next week.
Okay, and thanks for that, by the way, because I don't think I would have ventured around Believe It if you hadn't suggested it. So that's one of the things I do like about that is the alternate suggestions means that we kind of go into territory that we might ordinarily not go into. What would happen if Armando Iannucci and Hugh Laurie decided to go into space?
Oh, was this a radio comedy drama?
TV.
Oh, well, clearly I don't fully know the answer then, but I'd be intrigued. I'm just wondering whether I've heard something with the two of them in, but a radio show. But anyway, that's a distraction because you're talking about a TV show. I would give it a listen, certainly. Yeah, with two heavyweights like that.
Well, I'm being a bit disingenuous because Armando Iannucci's behind the camera. Hugh Laurie is in front of the camera.
Okay.
And Rebecca Front's in it as well. And other people that you're going to recognise. But it's one of those that doesn't kind of feature in the mainstream landscape because I think it was an Apple TV distribution. I'm not really sure about that. I'll give you all the production details next week when we talk about it. But it's called Avenue 5. I don't think it invaded the consciousness as it maybe should have done or could have done. So it'd be interesting to see what we make of it. But anyway, Avenue 5, sci-fi, Hugh Laurie, Rebecca Front, put together by Armando Iannucci, and we'll talk more next week. Okay,
intrigued. Is that, did you say a series and episode number?
It's, as far as I'm aware, it's only got one series. So I was going to go for 1-1, just so that we don't go, well, I'm not really quite sure who that bloke is with the big head.
That's you, that is.
That's yes, that was Tamira.
Okay. I look forward to that. Intriguing. And Armando Iannucci, a bit of a name to conjure with, as are the other names, of course. So, to anti-social media. Now, there's a particular reason. Well, there's always good reasons to follow us on the twits. But a particular reason, with an obituary of poor, the late and lamented Barry Cryer, who we were talking about earlier. Do join us at Comedy Slab. That's our handle on Twitter. Do follow us there. And also the Facebook page, like us there, which is the same handle, at Comedy Slab. Personal recommendations to friends, family, and, imams. The Archbishop of Canterbury, provided he doesn't tell you to F off. Do pass the word on. Actually, he'll probably get down on his bended knees and fall at your feet and thank you for recommending the Comedy Slab. And lastly, but in no way leastly, if you could give us a nice generous star rating on Apple Podcast, iTunes, that'd be fantastic too, with a bit of blurb as to what you like about the show.
I've met him a few times, in the past few years as well. The Archbishop, before he was the Archbishop of Canterbury, I should say. Because he was the Bishop of Coventry before he was the Archbishop, Justin Welby, yeah.
All right. I met him briefly once, but I can't really compete with your numerous meetings thereof.
No, we were like that. In fact, I knew him so well. I used to say to him, "Nice hat."
Was that the way where the phone would ring and he'd open up the hat at the front? That's the Pope.
Who's that? Dave Allen. Is
Dave Allen.
Like Dave Allen. That does. Yeah.
In the days before mobile phones as well. That was an extra funny thing.
I always used to want to go, hey. I thought you could only move diagonally, but
very good.
Yeah, it's been done, hasn't it? It's been done. I'm not going to do it again. Don't forget, if you want to catch up with the Comedy Slab, we're on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. If you can do us a favour, or if you want to do us a favour, Spreaker is the best place for us. We
should give out cash rewards for listening to us.
Steady. I never ever say the words "give out" and "cash" in the same sentence. But
I've heard that from your wife as well.
Absolutely. But if you Spotify, and don't forget, there's a kind of an audio thing going on YouTube as well, which you can have a look at there.
Audio visual, I would say.
Oh yes, very psychedelic.
Anyway, remains for me to stand stock still here, and I suppose I'll eventually have to put some clothes on, but I don't want to contravene the Windmill Theatre Act.
Yes, I was going to say, I didn't want to mention it. I thought you were moving about too much.
It's the wind, love.
The saddest thing at the start, I was going to say, God, you could have ironed that shirt before you started recording tonight. But then
That's no shirt, that's my skin.
Realising you're naked. Yes, and unlike Richard Wilson, my Valentino camouflage print low tops are in the wash, so I'm going to slink off in my black National Health plimsolls instead, I think.
Well, they've got a certain charm, haven't they? And a shabby chic.